Get yourself nice and situated wherever you want to be. And just take a notice of your own breath in this moment. Just being aware of the rhythm of your breath. Enjoy. Now becoming aware of the breath of the world around you. Can you feel that? Some people might have a windy day, some people might have a very calm day, but can you feel the rhythm of the breath of the world around you? And your own breath is your own unique rhythm. And just like a big symphony playing together, you can each be in playing your own instruments, and you can play them in harmony with one another. So being attentive to the breath of the earth and attentive to your own breath right now as we start. My handsome cardinal. And let's go ahead and we'll first send our attention with our eyes out into the earth in front of us. And why don't you begin first relatively close to yourself? So just looking at a distance that's maybe like 10 or 15 feet away from you. It's a distance that's really nourishing for our eyes. Our eyes don't have to strain too far to see that distance. So just start there and let your eyes just become soft at that distance. And just noticing what that feels like in your body and for your own eyesight. And then you can stretch your eyes a little bit, your eyesight a little bit further off to something in the distance and allowing your vision to get nice and soft once you've reached your point of focus. I'll mute myself so you guys can have your own birds today. Great, and now just staying in this nice calm state, staying attentive to your breath, the breath of the earth, the softened gaze that you have now, and whichever is, I guess, more nourishing for you, whether it's to look a bit closer to yourself and keep your gaze soft, or whether it's to keep your focus far away but still stay soft in that vision. Just choose whichever one is more nourishing for you right now. And then we're going to send our attention to our ears, starting first with a sound that is relatively close to you, something that you might not have been attentive to. Listen for a sound that maybe is in the background of your awareness right now, and see if you can bring it to the forefront. Nice work. And now stretch your sense of hearing out into the landscape, maybe 100 or 200 yards away. And doing the same thing, looking for a sound, looking with your ears for a sound that might have gone unnoticed to you at that distance, and see if you can bring it into your awareness right now. Sometimes those particular sounds that are in the back of our awareness are often the sounds like man-made sounds or human-made sounds that sometimes we want to ignore. It's always good to just touch in once in a while with them. And now stretch your hearing really far out into the landscape, imagining if you can hear something that was 2 miles away. Just really try to stretch your ears and listening for a sound that you might have gone unnoticed at first. So just allow yourself to stay in this attuned state right now. And I'll tell you the story that sort of sets the tone for our our morning practice today. So when I was out on my morning run, I was thinking about a friend of ours meaning people in the nature connection community. He's one of our teachers. His name is Paul Rayfield, and he's a native man from Michigan, I believe, Michigan, and maybe Minnesota. I'm forgetting right now. But I worked with him years ago, and he's wrestling right now with cancer. And so someone sent out a nice message, just things we could do for Paul at this moment. And I got thinking back to those times when I used to work with Paul, and something that we would always do when we started our courses or our gatherings, when we were working together, was a practice that another native elder had shared with us. His name was Jake Swamp, and Jake was the chief of the Wolf Clan of the Mohawk tribe. And Jake met John Young years ago, got to know each other, and Jake shared with us something called what they called the Thanksgiving address, or the words before all else. And this is a practice, not a practice, it's really a ceremony. And it can happen on a daily basis. For them, it's an annual ceremony. Sometimes it can take many days to do a full Thanksgiving address. And it's something that when Jake shared this with us, he was careful to say, he said, how did he put it? Something like, uh, we have enough Mohawks, or enough trouble with our own people right now. We don't need to make more. And so I think what he was trying to say, what he was trying to get across, is he doesn't want us to become like them. He wants us just to be our own selves and to find our own way with this beautiful gift of the Thanksgiving address. So he didn't want us to imitate him or do it exactly like he did it, but to find our own way with it. And so I think this morning what I wanted to do was lead you through a version of the Thanksgiving address, something that that rings true for me, something that we used to practice when we started our programs. And so it really was a way that we started each of our days, and also we started each of our staff meetings with some version of a Thanksgiving address, some way to remember all those that came before us and the ones that are around now. So one thing I remember Jake doing, and again, this is something that's unique to them, because for them, the strawberries, the wild strawberries, were a really sacred plant. And that was where Jake used to always start, was with the strawberries. But for today, let's start with the earth herself. So I want you just to look out on the landscape and to listen out on the landscape as I guide you through this. And just listening for and looking for what it is that you see and what you experience, and offering your own sense of gratitude when I give you sort of a category to think about. So looking out to the earth herself right now, just in your own way, offer your own sense of gratitude and thanks to the earth right now. that whole big living being, Mama Earth. And one thing that I always appreciate about working with the various Native elders that I have over the years is that they never take anything too seriously. So there's always a sense of play and joy in what they do, even in a ritual or a ceremony. And so as we go through this today, if you want to bird, if there's something you see or hear, feel free to allow yourself to focus on that if you want to. And so now let's bring our attention to the plants. So looking around your land and thinking, just looking at which ones draw your attention, and allow yourself to offer gratitude and thanksgiving to those plants that inhabit your world right now. And one thing I'll encourage you to do as you go through this practice, instead of just saying, thank you, and that's it, really think about that one. Really imagine if you're telling its story. Like, what are you really thankful for with that one being in your life? What is it about that one, and how do you know it? Almost as if you're speaking to it with a poem. Now you can shift your attention to any trees or shrubs on your landscape. And when you feel complete, of course, you can never be fully complete. But when you feel complete with the trees and shrubs, and then you can move on to the grasses. If there's any grasses, or whether they're tall grasses like a meadow, or even the mowed grass on your lawn. We'll shift our attention to those right now. While we're down low, let's go even lower. And so thinking about all of the creepy crawlies that live on our earth, in the grasses, on the ground, and even beneath the earth herself. And while we're here close to the earth, I'd like you to think about the different forms of water that you're connected to in your life, whether it's fresh water, moving streams, the big wild ocean mama, whatever form of water, if it's a waterfall, any body of water. And speaking of the water, we can bring ourselves now up into the skies. And some of us may have some clouds moving overhead, others we have a bright blue sky above us. Even if you have a bright blue sky and no clouds, I want you just to think about the last time you saw some clouds and offering your gratitude and thanks to the clouds as they move across our land. You can shift your awareness to some of the big celestial bodies in our sky, whether it's the big sun or the great moon herself, and even the planets that revolve around our Earth. Now, taking a moment to think about those ones in your life that came before you, whether it's family, friends, even animals that you may have known. And you can go back as far as you want, as far as you can think about the ancestors that came before you. So, whether it's a recent ancestor or someone quite a ways off, offering your own sense of gratitude and thanksgiving to those that came before you. And now it's good to always remember those people in our life that are still alive today, including yourselves. So, offering your sense of gratitude to those people who help make your life what it is today and who you've interacted with and maybe who have touched your life in some way or another. And now to that one in life, different people have different names for it, whether you call it God or the universe or the spirit in all things, whatever your name is for that entity that gave breath to life and that created all of this magic and wonder that we live in today. You can offer your sense of gratitude to whatever that entity is in your life, if you have one. And finally, a good thing to do at the end of a Thanksgiving like this is to throw out what they say is a blanket of Thanksgiving to anything that we might have forgotten, because there are many, many, many other things we could have offered thanks to the electricity that runs through our world now to make us all connected to all sorts of forms of life, all the forms of life in the sea and the waters that we may have forgotten, everything. Anything that we may not have mentioned, we'll throw a big blanket of Thanksgiving out to all those things. So whatever that is for you, you can offer that now. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for joining for our practice today. Today we did our Thanksgiving. They call it the Thanksgiving address, or the words before all else. So this is a way that Jake shared with us that they start all their gatherings. So could you imagine that before a business meeting, if you took even just 5 minutes to give gratitude to the things in life, what might shift or change in that business meeting, or a family get together, whatever it is, it does have the possibility to shift things. And I'm curious now to hear for all of you, if you've never done this before, even if this is your 8,000th time doing something like this, what it was like for you this morning. If anything came up for you, or if you became aware of something in the practice of doing it that you might not have been aware of before about the world around you. And as usual, you can just wave your hand if you want to. And I see there's something in the chat. I haven't noticed that yet. Yeah, she does. That's good. I saw that. Claudia, thank you. That Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about the Thanksgiving address and braiding sweetgrass. Yeah, what did you notice for yourself in terms of, did anything shift in your awareness of the world by sitting in this way? Is this something you've done before? Do you often find that you offer thanks? Yeah, go for it, Anne.
From Ecclesiastics, it came to me, and a time for every purpose under heaven, when we were thinking about the grass, and I'm looking at my mode areas, and I thought, well, I'm glad I have these because it gives us a place to park the cars when we have a party. It's where the kids could run and play tag. We have open areas, but I can also look out to the other farm, and there's a grass area that's feeding sheep. And we have prairie restoration, and we've got the tall grasses they're now sprouting along the road edges. And they just got mowed the other day, but I thought, you go grasses, you go, the mower's going to come soon. But there's a purpose for whether it's the grasses that are mowed in your yard, or the tall ones in the prairies, or the ones that are feeding the sheep. So there's different purposes for all the grasses.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there's a lot of conversation about grass these days, and mowing lawns or not to mow the lawns and whatnot. And I think more than most of us realize, the idea of grass, not it's not even an idea, but the grass itself has a really deep tie in our ancestry, in all of our ancestries. And there's a really powerful book that has kind of a hippie sort of title, but it's very not a hippie book. And it's called Wolf Totem. I don't know if anyone's ever read that book. It's a really powerful book. And at its root, at its core, it's really about the grasses and in Mongolia and the horses and whatnot. But it's a very powerful, really intense, beautiful, beautifully told story. But just had me thinking about grass in a different way, and our connection to it, you know. And it's easy to look out on the mowed lawn and think like, oh yeah, this is an English. I think a lot of people think that the reason for mowed lawns comes from, you know, the English and all sorts of reasons for that. But I think there's something even older and deeper and pretty magic. And so thank you for sharing that, Anne. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, and there's all different forms the grass can take. Mhm. Who else wants to share? I know for me, there was one moment, I'm trying to think about, something came up that, what was it? I hadn't been aware of, I can't remember what it is right now actually, but I remember thinking like how grateful I was that we were doing this because it made me have a different perspective on, was it the trees? Oh, I know what it was. It was the berries. I started thinking because I had a really big wave of warblers and all sorts of other birds come through my yard this morning, and one a fairly rare species. And I was thinking of going birding this morning, and I was like, oh, I actually saw a bird out my window, and I was like, let me just go check that bird out. And I just didn't leave. I was out there for like over an hour because they just kept coming. And a number of them were coming to this little cherry tree it's not little, it's way taller than I am, but it's a cherry tree in my neighbor's yard. And there's another one a little bit off in the distance. And even, who did I see? There was a sapsucker that was eating some of the cherries this morning. A young sapsucker kept coming back to it. And but doing the Thanksgiving address, I got thinking about, because also with Jake and the berries, I just got thinking about this cherry tree. And then I thought to myself, I was like, where does your juice come from? Like, I just think about a tree and like just the magic of that like there's a juice filled fruit up there in the tree. And like, where does that come from? You know, I know there's a scientific reason and whatnot, and we could look it up and Google it, but really like the magic of the water and the juice in the tree and that berry is just, it feels magic to me, and that it feeds so many right now. There's so many, there was the rose-breasted grosbeaks were up there, the tanagers were up there eating, the woodpecker, even the warblers were eating the insects around the berries. But yeah, the titmice were up there, the chickadees, like everybody was loving them. And it's just so like, just that one tree provides so much. And yeah, so I was in awe for a moment of the juice and the berries of not the berries, but I guess, are cherries berries technically? No, they're fruit. So anyway, I was just in awe with those this morning. Any last thoughts before we go? That's fine. So thank you everybody for coming this morning and sharing in this sweet practice and Thanksgiving. I have there's a new mentor that's going to be working with my master's group, and he's from Israel, and he's going through the master's program now. He's already a very skillful bird language facilitator and mentor, but he wants to go through the course because, you know, he's going to be mentoring the master's students. And he started the first exercise and did the Thanksgiving address, and he called me, he messaged me right away on WhatsApp. He's like, Kristi, I don't know if this is because of Thanksgiving address or if it's just timing or what, but he's just like, nothing has been happening at my sit spot for weeks. And he's just like, I went out there, I did the practice, and he's just like, oh my God. And he just listed all these things that happened for him and how he saw this hawk up in the tree right there where he sits every day and all this stuff. And he was just like, he said it was just profound, like what it it opened him up to seeing. And I really do believe that something starts to shift in us when we tap in this way, you know, and it can really change the way that we're listening, and the way that we're listening with our ears and our eyes and our whole body, you know, how we listen. And so I'd encourage you to do your own version, something like this, you know, throughout the week, and just see what happens. Just notice what might happen, even if it's like before you have a conversation with someone that might be a challenging conversation, you know, you can do just a 1 minute Thanksgiving in your own way for the things in your life that are around you, and just see what happens. Notice what might shift or change. So thank you, everybody. Let's see. Oh, the name of the book again, Claudia. Let's see. It was called Wolf Totem. It is called Wolf Totem. I forget the name of the author. It's easy to find. I know it's on Amazon. It's a really wonderful book. So wolf, like the animal, ow, and totem, like a totem pole. So Wolf Totem is the name of the book. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful story.
I was just looking it up. It's Jiang Rong, R-O-N-G.
Great. That's perfect. Yep. Yeah,
R-O-N.
I think the author's story is that if I remember, it'd be interesting to look up his story, but if I remember correctly, I think he was born in the city, but then went out. I can't remember. I shouldn't even try to butcher it, but it's worth looking up his story, because he has an interesting background as well. So thanks, Anne, for looking it up, and thanks everybody for joining today. We'll see you next time, next week. All right.
Thank you, Kristi.
Have a beautiful late summer.